All right, hey, it's Mr. Robinson. I'm here back again with another day of the Mr. Robinson lecture series here. Try to help you guys out while you're learning at home, doing that social distancing, the things like that. Remember, because we don't want to spread this virus, this coronavirus. But I tell you what, I am going to spread on you today. I'm getting ready to spread a little bit of knowledge on you about the 1920s. All right, and particularly something that happened with the 18th Amendment in the United States, the prohibition of alcohol. All right, so here it's on Nearpod here. Now this is like a warm up I do with the students. Um, Regarding the use of marijuana today, which students are always very interested in. But with that, it's just you kind of look at some of the parallels here of the criminalization of marijuana, and then in the 20s, the criminalization of alcohol or prohibition of alcohol. All right, so most students, they either don't care if it should be legalized or they vote yes. But some of the points right here, so you don't have to do this as far as drawing pros and cons. Sometimes I have students do it or we do it on the board. A pro would be of legalizing marijuana, well, less people go to jail. Okay. A con would be, well, there's some social things that people say that leads to more bad behavior, or it's a gateway drug. All right, but just know that when they prohibited the use of alcohol, well, then that's going to lead to more people going to jail. All right. So, anyways, I'm going to just go get past that and get on with the lecture here. All right, changing ways of life. So, you look at the differences in the rural population of the 20s and the urban populations, and this still exists today. All right. In the cities, behavior is tends to be not as scrutinized as much as it is in rural communities. All right, so there's the bottom where it says alcohol consumption, gambling, casual dating, being promiscuous for women. That's more tolerated in urban areas in the cities than in rural areas for the most part. All right, and the cities were growing during this time. Remember, America is kind of we've just stepped up to where we were on kind of the JV level. All right. Now after World War One, we're kind of we're getting right there where we're on varsity. All right, well we are on varsity. And then now after World War Two, once we get to that, we're like the top player on varsity. But just stay tuned, we'll get to that, don't worry. Um in the cities, so a lot of people are moving to the cities, particularly African Americans, which we'll study later this week with talk about a little bit more about the Great Migration and something called the Harlem Renaissance. But in the cities, behavior is more liberated, I guess you could say, than it would be in the rural areas. So this still exists today. All right. So here, prohibition, the topic I'm getting to. All right, who wanted it? Well, you have the progressive reformers, which from that progressive era we studied earlier. All right, women's groups, that's a big one. There's a little picture on there for you. All right, lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours. So, well, why would women want? Why would they support prohibition? Oh wait. All right. Well, I know women support prohibition because they feel like alcohol at times it can tear apart their family life, and I'm telling you, in some instances it does. I'll give you a little anecdote here. When I was in the Marine Corps, I had to respond a few times, 2 or 3 times, to a Marine that I was in charge of who get in a domestic dispute with his wife. I mean, this isn't just one. This is like multiple different Marines that did this, and every time I had to go and find out what was going on, keep from the dispute from escalating. Alcohol was involved. All right, so that's why women typically felt that prohibition of alcohol was a good thing. All right, religious leaders. This guy I mentioned and put him on there, Billy Sunday. Okay, these religious leaders felt that morally alcohol made people do bad things. All right, and again, it's more accepted in rural communities, or at least prohibition of alcohol was at the time. All right, than in the cities, because remember, alcohol was a big moneymaker in the cities. All right. Even today in rural communities, there are certain counties in, I think there may only be one county in North Carolina. It's a dry county. All right. And where's that county? It's not in Charlotte. It's not in Raleigh. Okay. It's a rural county out in the western part of the state. All right. So it's more accepted in rural communities, the idea of prohibition. All right. This video, remember, you guys, this lesson here is self-paced. All right. So you can do it on your own. I put these videos on there. Normally we do it in class, but I'm just putting it on there for you on your own. Now, why was it more accepted in rural communities? Well, I kind of went over a couple different things. One is rural communities, they tend to be more conservative, all right, in their values. Also, if you look at the idea of making money, all right, alcohol is a big money maker at the time, or still is. And in the cities, in a nightclub, in a bar, all right, you make a lot of money selling alcohol, or the people that sell it do. So that would be an answer for that. So prohibition. So now we get an 18th Amendment. All right. Remember, a lot of people consider alcohol a cause of corruption. Now, if you look at some of the pros and cons of alcohol, well, I'm telling you there are a lot of cons, but it leads people to do things they normally maybe wouldn't do. All right, it's dangerous, particularly when people drive, and then this time you have the first cars, or the uses of the cars starting to come into play. All right, so the government, they established a Volstead Act. The Volstead Act, where they made the Volstead Act, which established a bureau that would enforce the law. All right, but here's the thing: if you're really about enforcing it, or you're about doing it, all right, you need to fund it and send a lot of money into it to do it. All right, don't halfway do it. Okay, you need to come in there and you need to come in there full force with it. All right. So, for instance, when we look at Vietnam in that era, when we get to it, I'm just trying to draw parallels here for you. The United States could have easily went in Vietnam and won, but they kind of half stepped in there. All right, so the government kind of did this with this bureau that they established to enforce the 18th Amendment. So here's the kind of different groups. All right, one, we talked about religious leaders who were for prohibition, women who were for prohibition. I'm not saying all of them were, but a lot were. Now you have speakeasies or nightclubs. All right, speakeasies, they were underground nightclubs, but they basically provided alcohol illegally. A lot of times they would have like a secret password. You go in there and say a password, and they would take you to the back, and boom, you go ahead and get your alcohol there if that's what you were looking for. Found in penthouses, tenements, hardware stores. I mean, everywhere. Because remember, this is a way of making money, and I say it every time, playing with my money is like what? It's like playing with my emotions. People want that money. All right. So you have that. Bootleggers, another group of people that emerged during the time. So bootleggers are essentially people who smuggled alcohol. Now, I don't know if any of y'all are NASCAR fans. I'm a big NASCAR fan. This is how NASCAR started. People were souping up their cars to outrun the police, all right, while they were smuggling alcohol in from Canada, Cuba, the West Indies. And then, so you have that, you have bootleggers, these saloon owners, and then you have the rise in organized crime with one Al Capone gets this huge bootlegging or organized crime empire in Chicago. All right. And so there's a video here. You can watch it on your own. I typically show it in class. Well, actually, I don't know if it'll be on here, but Al Capone, basically, organized crime, he was a gangster. All right. And he starts with his rise during this time. So, I mean, this lasts for about 13 years, this idea of prohibition. By the mid 1920s, so it starts in 1920, goes to 1933. By the mid 1920s, only 19% of Americans are supporting prohibition. Now, the rural Americans still supported it, but 1933, America's had enough. All right, at this point, 1933, America is in a depression, well, actually something known as a Great Depression. All right, the opposite of my classroom because it's not depressing at all. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But 1933, they have that's enough. All right, so we have a 21st Amendment, which essentially, basically, it overturns the 18th Amendment. And again, this is designed in a way to try to maybe help America ease out of that Great Depression. Here is, well, there's another video you can watch. I'm not going to play it on here. You can watch it on your own time. I've already watched it several times because I teach this lesson every semester. Here's the assignment, okay? So you pick a group, all right? You could be a speakeasy owner. You could be an organized crime boss, all right? You could be a women's temperance member. Remember, temperance it was basically the idea of those who wanted prohibition of alcohol. So a temperance member that supported prohibition. Law enforcement officers, so you can talk about, hey, we're trying to get these guys who are supplying alcohol, yet we're not really given the tools that we need to get the job done. And then you could be a very religious rural Protestant member. So you write a journal entry here, right? Write it, and then you describe how prohibition has affected your life. So maybe you're for it, maybe you like it, all right? Like just like you guys like my class. Maybe you don't like it. All right, I'm telling you, an organized crime boss would probably like prohibition because this allows their illegal criminal activities to flourish and then to make a lot of money. All right. Speakeasy owner may like it too because again they're making money off this because they're selling alcohol legally and not everybody is selling alcohol legally. All right, so just pick one of those and you write a journal entry. Make sure you include the date. Okay, so it's going to be from 1920 to 1933 here, and then you share it or email it to me. All right, I emailed you these guys, all this. Emailed all of you this assignment. I put it on Haiku, but now I'm going to email you this video when I'm done with that. So you're welcome. There are a few more things I want to go over. I don't want to get too long in the video, but we have this idea of clashing between the teaching of science and religion. So there's a very famous trial here called the Scopes trial, which happened in Tennessee, which is typically a conservative, more rural area. In Tennessee, they had a law at the time which said basically you could not teach evolution in school. All right, it prohibited teaching evolution. So this guy, he's teaching evolution, all right, which is against the law. I know it sounds crazy, but it was. And so you have this fight over is he doing the right thing? Is he not doing the right thing? And it becomes a famous trial. William Jennings Bryan, I don't know if you remember him from the very first unit we studied in that Cross of Gold speech. He actually comes in and he appears at the trial as a lawyer. Clarence Darrow, another famous lawyer, they're there, and it becomes a huge national ordeal. So there's a video that you could probably watch. And then there's a matching activity on here as well. So that was an example of these new values and old values kind of clashing. Eventually the law was overturned, but now here in the 20s, now I'll get to this later, or maybe more this week. Actually, I probably won't, but this is important, all right? The women becoming liberated in the 1920s. More women had entered the workforce. Remember, that's kind of a result of World War I, that women the country needed them in the workforce. A lot of women started to challenge social norms, meaning, all right, that they would maybe be a little more promiscuous than they had before. They would dress a little differently. All right, that's where you have this idea of flappers, younger women who would embrace new fashions and attitudes. The flapper was a dress that they wore. All right, so maybe they would be a little more forward in pursuing males, or they would go and dance, socialize more than perhaps they used to. All right, that's so this is something that kind of happens in the 20s, starting a women's movement. It's a social movement. There's an example of a video you guys can watch. All right, education and popular culture. So as far as education, you start to have more mandatory education going on in the 20s. All right, with popular culture, you have leisure time, so you have people going to dance halls, all right, particularly women here now. Baseball games, all right, the rise of baseball and one Babe Ruth, New York Yankee. All right, I pull for the New York Yankees. I pull for winners. Babe Ruth during the time was the famous New York Yankee baseball player. Radio broadcast. All right, so now, as I mentioned in the last unit there, with the radio, creates a nationalized culture, and so the country they can hear the broadcast of these baseball games. Now everybody will start to become more interested in the same things, a common culture. All right. You have mass circulation of magazines. I did someone over in my last lecture, but you have F. Scott Fitzgerald. All right, I don't know if you have read The Great Gatsby. It's a good book. There's a movie about it as well. He writes a famous book. Charles Lindbergh makes the first nonstop solo transatlantic flight. All right, so that's important as well. Anyways, look, you guys need to watch this lecture series. Look, I hope I infected you with some great knowledge here, even though we're doing the social distancing. But if you have any questions about anything, remember, anything, life in general, the work we're doing here, please email me. That's what I'm here for, guys.